Welcome to the first edition of Before the Battle. My name is Nick Baldwin, and I'm owner of MMAJunior.co. And joining me today is MMA Thought and Best Fight Picks owner, Daniel Levy. How you doing, Daniel?
Doing great, Nick. Thanks for having me back.
No problem, no problem. And also on the panel tonight is a Vendetta fighter feature writer, Go Paolo. How you doing, Paolo?
I'm doing well, Nick. Thanks for having us back.
So obviously, tonight UFC 188 takes place, and the return of Cain Velasquez finally goes down tonight. He's been out of action with various injuries since October 2013, believe it or not. But before we get to UFC 188, we'll go through that card in full detail. But before we get to that, let's go back to last Saturday, UFC Fight Night 68 from New Orleans, Louisiana. And Dan Henderson, the MMA legend, stopped Tim Boesch in the main event in 28 seconds. Daniel, you called it on episode 0 of this UFC Roundtable, let's call it. Were you confident in Hendo? I know you didn't bet on it, so maybe not.
Well, I mean, obviously you can't be too confident when the guy's 44 years old, and I thought he was still fighting on fumes, but he went in there and he just knocked out Tim Boesch, and I always say the last thing for a fighter to go is their power. So he showed he still has that power, and he knocked the guy out in 28 seconds, and it was a vintage H-bomb.
Obviously, like you said, it only went 28 seconds, so there's not too much to talk about the actual performance. But Paolo, thoughts on the H-bomb that we didn't think would land on Saturday night, but it did. So Dan Henderson proved us wrong. What were your thoughts on the fight, Paolo?
He's a legend. What can I say? I mean, nobody from what I know was confidently picking Hendo. I mean, only like the most hardcore of Hendo fans would pick Hendo, but he's a legend for a reason.
People that pick from the heart, like Daniel Levy over here.
Yeah, I know. It's definitely should have listened to Daniel at that time. So called it. But I'm also really surprised of Tim Boech's poor strategy in there. Just totally went in and slugged it out with Hendo. I guess he really wanted to give the fans a fight, and unfortunately for him, it didn't work out in his favor.
And we'll just quickly touch on the co-main event. Big Ben Rothwell picked up a submission, not TKO, submission win over Matt Mitrione. And Paolo, this one you called. You didn't call a submission, but you called I believe you called it a late round TKO.
Yeah.
Third or so. So what were your thoughts on Big Ben Rothwell's performance, the fight in general, and yeah?
Well, I picked from the heart actually when I picked Rothwell, but I didn't bet on it because I wasn't that confident in it. But the thing about Rothwell is he's just one of those fighters that, like he just has that. He just wins. You can't explain it. I mean, he just wins. I mean, and it's because he's really tough, and that goes a long way, especially in the heavyweight division. If you can eat your opponent's best shots, that sort of like discourages them, and I think that's what happened with Mitrione. He had like a little brain fart, or he panicked a little bit, and he shot for a takedown, and it was a really bad move, and Rothwell caught him, choked him out, and that's what happens. happens.
And Daniel, what were your thoughts on his post-fight interview with John Anik?
I mean, obviously it was great. Now people are talking about Ben Rothwell. It would have been nicer if he just walked out of the cage, yeah. But it went down the way it went. And as far as the fight's concerned, whenever you're going in there against an opportunistic veteran such as Ben Rothwell, you can't make mistakes. You have to stick to your game plan. And Mitrione was looking great on the feet, but he decided to go for the takedown for whatever reason, and it cost him.
And Paolo, what's next for Rothwell?
Oh, I don't know. Yeah, he called up Arlovsky, so I think fighting Arlovsky makes a lot of sense right now. Although, if the UFC wants to go with Arlovsky for their next title challenger, which I think they might, it's either him or Miocic, I'm really not sure, but I'm really liking the Arlovsky fight.
Yeah, and Daniel, do you think Arlovsky versus Rothwell makes sense?
I mean, yeah, just in terms of the fact that Arlovsky did knock out Ben Rothwell back in the day, but for me personally, I would like to see Andrei Arlovsky get that next title shot. He knocked out Travis Brown in the first round, and not many people get to do something like that. So I would like to see Andrei Arlovsky challenge the winner of Werdum versus Cain.
And so with that, do you think Miocic should fight Rothwell, because really Stipe Miocic and Andrei Arlovski are the two guys right in title contention right now.
Yeah, I mean, I won't argue against it. If Stipe decides to wait for the title shot, that's cool too. But Ben Rothwell versus Stipe Miocic, that's a great fight.
So let's introduce the did not play segment for the first time. Both you guys are bettors, but we all make mistakes. Of course, there's a prop bets like Big Ben Rothwell via submission. I think that was something like plus 1,000 or more or whatever. But no one really expected Big Ben Rothwell to win via submission, and the way he did, of course. But there's, of course, always some bets, prop bets, whatever, that are a bit more, you'd wonder why you didn't bet that. Of course, like Anthony Burchak picked up a TKO win in the first round over Joe Soto, and I know Daniel, you didn't play that, but Burchak, that was a very close fight. So first off, let's go to Paolo. What was your did not play of the week? What was one bet that you should have played that made sense, but you just didn't lay any money on it?
Easy. It's gonna be Quinones. I even picked him to win, especially when Morales missed weight. I switched my topology pick to Quinones right away, and why I didn't follow that up with a bet, I'm not sure. Maybe it's just because knowing how Mexican fighters are and knowing how Quinones is, they get into brawls, and I was worried that he would still get into a brawl with Morales and not take him down, which would be the smart thing to do. And he did the smart thing. He took him down and he choked him out.
And Daniel, what is your did not play for this week?
You know, I have to agree with what you said earlier, Nick. For me, it has to be Anthony Burchak, because when I was breaking down this fight, I did give the edge to Burchak. You know, I thought he was the more dynamic fighter. It's just when you watch his past fights, you know, he'll be dominating someone and then he'll give up his back and get flattened out. So he has these little lapses, and you know, I should have looked past that and picked him. But you know, you live, you learn.
For sure, for sure. So let's move on to tonight's pay-per-view card. Let's actually start off with the headliner of the prelims, a pivotal flyweight bout between Henry Cejudo and Chico Camus. So let's start off with Paolo. Who do you like in this fight?
I like Cejudo. I'm not gonna waste much time breaking it down, but Cejudo all the way. You know, you can either stand with him, he can take him down, he can do a mixture of both. I think he's just flat out better than Camus.
And Daniel, I know Cejudo is the biggest favorite on this card. He's been right around minus 900 all the way up to minus 1250 or so. Do you like him in this fight?
I absolutely like Henry Cejudo. I think he's going to get it done. You know, Chico Camus, he's made some big improvements in his game. His footwork is looking better than ever. But when you go against a guy that has that kind of footwork, what you have to do is cut off the ring and close the distance. And that's exactly what Henry Cejudo does. So I really believe he's going to cruise to an easy 30-27 here.
For sure, for sure. And so kicking off the main card, a women's strawweight fight between Tecia Torres and Angela Hill. Paolo, who do you like in this fight?
Oh, I've been flipping. Well, I wouldn't really say flip-flopping, but I've been like having. I really wanted to pick Hill on this, but that was more of a heart pick because I really like Hill. I think she could go far in the division. Although I don't know if it's too soon. I think Tecia's gonna win by decision. She's gonna use her movement and confound Hill. Although Hill is the harder hitter and she's stronger in the clinch. And there's a clear way to beat Torres, but that's not Hill's strength. Because if you take Torres to the ground, then you'll likely beat her. But Hill is likely going to end up striking with her, and I think Torres is going to win 30-27 or 29-28.
I also like Torres via decision here. Daniel, who do you like here, Torres or Hill?
You know, you got to go with Tecia Torres here. Now, Angela Hill, she does have a lot of potential, but she's just very inexperienced. She's 2-1 if you count the Ultimate Fighter loss. And you know, the kinds of fighters that give Tecia Torres problems are grapplers, and I think in this specific fight, Tecia Torres is going to be the one that initiates the grappling. I see her actually taking down Angela Hill and winning on the scorecards.
So the next fight on the pay-per-view main card, Yair Rodriguez versus Charles Rosa. I'm very excited for this fight. I always like seeing Rosa compete. I believe this is his third fight inside the octagon. I do think he has lots of potential to come. Who do you like in this fight, Paolo?
I really like Rodriguez in this fight. At first, I leaned on Rosa, But after I watched their fights, I can just see just how similar of a fighter they are. I mean, their stand-up, they get a little crazy and their striking, and they really initiate a lot of grappling. And they're the type of fighters that they'll abandon position or they'll go for a risk. They'll take more chances on the ground. I think this is going to be a really fun back and forth fight, and I'm not going to be surprised if either one of them gets finished, either striking or by submission. But I'm going to go with Rodriguez to pick like a split decision win or something like that.
And Daniel, who do you like in this bout?
As long as Yair Rodriguez doesn't get tapped out by Charles Rosa, impressive Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu game, I think he's going to win the fight because he's a little bit more polished on the feet. And, with Charles Rosa, he does have that Taekwondo stance, and when he does that, that's when he's most effective. But when he decides to, change to the Muay Thai stance, that's when he gets pieced up a little bit because he doesn't check leg kicks and, he blocks punches with his face, and he's not the cleanest fighter at all. And I think Yair Rodriguez, he's been training with Greg Jackson. I think he's going to be a tiny bit more polished. So as long as he doesn't get tapped out, I got Yair Rodriguez with the upset.
I got Rosa in this fight, but I know there was a bunch of fights last week for New Orleans that you guys picked one guy, I picked the other, and you guys were right. So we'll see what happens tonight. But the next fight on the main card is a welterweight bout between a middleweight bout between Kelvin Gastelum and Nate the Great Marquardt. Who do you like in this fight, Paolo?
I really like Kelvin on this one. Not gonna use up too much time breaking up. But if this was the prime Nate Marquardt, I could have seen this being a very close fight, actually. But he's definitely not in his prime form anymore. I mean, he's off the TRT. He hasn't looked good in any of his fights. I mean, his last win came over James Tehuna, who hasn't won in a while now. I mean, that's also the last guy Shogun beat. But Marquardt looked good in that fight. He submitted Tehuna, and he showed some great grappling there, although Tehuna's not really the best grappler, so take that with a grain of salt. I think Marquardt's best chance of winning is by submitting Gastelum. I have a small feeling that Gastelum could get too excited. He might make a mistake on the ground. He might slip up, and Marquardt might catch him. But it's just a small feeling. It's just a little worry. But if Gastelum fights his fight, keeps up the pressure game, he's gonna piece up Marquardt, maybe even finish him early.
Gastelum's a fairly big favorite in this fight. Daniel, who do you like in this fight?
Nate Marquardt, he's one of these guys that he's got all the talent and all the skills, but what he lacks is the heart and the chin. When he went in there against Wilson Govea, he threw one of the best finishing combinations in UFC history with that spinning back fist to the flying knee, and he finished him with punches, and that was just beautiful. That armbar he hit on James Tehuna was super high level, but if you put pressure on Nate Marquardt and you hit him a couple times, he's going to break. He doesn't have that same confidence that someone like Kelvin Gastelum has. And when you talk about Kelvin Gastelum, on his worst possible day, he misses weight by 9 pounds, he's hospitalized, he has the flu, and he still goes to a split decision with the number 3 guy in the world. So I'm very confident in picking Kelvin Gastelum here.
So Paolo, how do you think moving back up to middleweight? Of course, Gastelum had a very good run at welterweight, but like Daniel just said, he missed weight by 9 pounds in his last outing. And so how do you think he'll look at 185 again?
Oh, I think he'll look good. I mean, we already saw a sample of him in the Ultimate Fighter. That was the middleweight show, and he went through the competition there. I mean, he beat Uriah Hall. Uriah Hall's not really a scrub, although a lot of people would like to see him as an underachiever, but he's still a pretty good fighter. He beat Josh Salmon, and Josh Salmon's a pretty good fighter. So, and both those guys are in their prime. So the way I see it, he's gonna go through Nate Marquardt. He's gonna look good.
And Daniel, of course, we're all pretty high on Kelvin Gastelum. Like you said, you go to a split decision against the number 3 guy, Tyron Woodley, who is a very good fighter. He beat Carlos Condit, of course. That fight ended prematurely, but he did get the W there. But that was literally the worst Kelvin Gastelum we could ever see. He missed weight by 9 pounds. He had the flu, like you're saying. So where do you see Kelvin Gastelum in his prime? He's still young. Where do you think the peak is for him? Do you think he'll be a future UFC champion?
I truly believe he has that kind of potential. I think what's going to happen is after he has this impressive performance tonight, he's going to drop back to 170 pounds and he's going to do things the right way. And, the sky's the limit for Kelvin Gastelum.
And so moving on to the co-main event of the evening, I'm so excited for this lightweight matchup. Gilbert El Nino Melendez takes on Eddie Alvarez. Paolo, who do you like in this fight?
I'm gonna go with my heart for this fight, and I'm gonna go with Eddie Alvarez. I mean, how can I not go with my heart for this fight? Those two guys are gonna brawl. I mean, Gilbert, he already said he's probably not gonna fight for a title again. I mean, he's getting up there in age, and he's basically here to make money and to put on exciting fights. So I don't see a reason why he and Eddie are not gonna brawl out there. And someone mentioned on Twitter, forgot who it is, but I'll get back to you on that. He said that Eddie has a knack of getting his opponents getting into a brawl with him. So I think he's gonna initiate a brawl with Melendez, and he might even knock out Melendez. But I'm gonna go with Alvarez for a decision, just because they're very hard to finish. But if Eddie knocks him out, it's the first person to knock out Melendez. I'm not gonna be too shocked.
This fight is the co-main event, so it's only 3 rounds, but I really, really wished it was headlining like a fight night or something, just so we could see those extra 10 minutes, because I really do think Gilbert Melendez versus Eddie Alvarez has all the potential to be even fight of the year or close to it, a candidate for sure. So Daniel, who do you like in the fight?
You know, I got Eddie Alvarez with the upset here. I think at this point in his career, he might be a little bit more motivated than Gilbert Melendez. And, you know, Gilbert Melendez in his last 5 fights, he hasn't looked like that same dominant champion that reigned back in Strikeforce. He might be on a little bit of a decline. And I think in terms of who they've been training with, Eddie Alvarez has been training with Michael Johnson, who's the number 5 lightweight in the world, and Nieki Holskin, who's one of the best strikers in the world. And, you know, Gilbert Melendez, his main sparring partner for this fight, is Ramsey Nijum. So, you know, based on that and based on where they are in their careers right now, I think Eddie Alvarez is going to be the hungrier guy. I think he has more title aspirations at this point, and I got to pick him for the upset.
Once again, I'm going against both of you. I like Gilbert Melendez here, but it is a very, very close fight. I would not be shocked whatsoever if Eddie Alvarez is able to pull off the W. Like Daniel said, Gilbert Melendez has not looked quite the same. He still is a very elite fighter. He's still a top 5 fighter in my opinion. But Eddie Alvarez looks very good, and but so does Melendez. So this will be a very fun fight, a very close fight. But do you think it will be stopped? Of course, I don't know. These guys, I really do think they'll just brawl it out for 15 minutes. So Daniel, do you think we see a stoppage in this fight?
You know, conventional wisdom would tell you that it goes to decision because these are 2 of the toughest guys in the weight class. But anytime you got 2 fighters like that and they're standing toe-to-toe, anyone can go down. So if one man scores the knockout, it's not going to surprise me. But most likely, it probably does go all 15 minutes.
All right, moving on to the main event of the evening. Finally, the UFC heavyweight champion returns, Cain Velasquez, after over a year and a half layoff. Of course, like I said earlier on, he has had various injuries. He will unify the heavyweight belt against interim title holder Fabricio Werdum, who defeated Mark Hunt just last November in an interim title fight to gain the interim belt. So who do you like to become the undisputed UFC heavyweight champion of the world, Daniel?
You know, I really want to pick Fabricio Werdum. I would like to see him get the belt, but you know, I have to go with Cain, and there's a lot of question marks in this fight. There's a reason I'm not betting on this fight. We haven't seen Cain since October 2013. Now, we have seen a lot of elite fighters come back from long layoffs. You know, George St. Pierre, Carlos Condit, all these guys come back. Conor McGregor, they all come back, and they look better than ever. So, you know, on one hand, Cain Velasquez could come back and be the best version of himself he's ever been, but he could also come back and it could be like that layoff he had when he fought Junior Cigano the first time, and he goes out there and gets knocked out. And Fabricio Werdum, he's at the peak of his career. You know, his stand-up is looking better than ever. Obviously, his jiu-jitsu is world-class, and, you know, he's got a knack for pulling off these big upsets. So I hope Werdum gets the upset here, but I have to go with Cain Velasquez.
Pick with your heart. Pick with your heart. It's just going to end up like the H-bomb, except we're probably going to catch him in like a submission or something. But anyways, who do you like in this fight, Paolo?
Well, I'm going to have a slight dissension on this, and I'm going to go with what Nick said. I'm going to go with my heart, and I'm going to pick Werdum. Can't really break it down that much because Daniel already said, I mean, Cain is just, you know, Cain could, I shouldn't say easily, but Cain could initiate what he did to JDS, basically push Werdum up against the fence, grind him down, beat his face up, take years away from his life, and just basically destroy him slowly, painfully, especially after Werdum apparently said those comments that Cain isn't a real Mexican. or he's an American trying to be a Mexican rather. And I think Cain really took that to heart. I think Cain's very proud of his Mexican heritage. I mean, he has brown pride tattooed across his chest, for God's sake. And he doesn't speak Spanish as well. I mean, but that doesn't mean you're not a real Mexican. You know what I mean? he's Mexican by heritage. And for Werdum to say that, I mean, I think that's an extra motivation for Cain to make it even worse for Werdum. But I'm gonna go with Werdum. I think he's gonna catch Cain slipping, and he's gonna get him in an armbar, anything. I mean, if Werdum could submit Fedor, I mean, he could definitely submit Cain. But logical pick, conventional pick would be to pick Cain, basically destroying Werdum, maybe TKO in the fourth, maybe a very painful 50-44 decision or something like that. But I'm going to go for Werdum. Let's say submission round 5, just for the fun of it.
Where on paper, this is a very close fight. Of course, like you said, Werdum has very improved striking over the years, working with Rafael Cordero over at King's MMA. But I got to go with my gut instinct, Cain Velasquez. I do think he's going to retain the UFC heavyweight championship, but like we said, he hasn't fought since October 2013, so there's so many factors going into this fight. But like, he could look awful, but he could also look super motivated. He could look, and there's a bit of beef between Werdum. So like Paolo, you said, it could even just energize Cain even more, because Werdum has pissed him off a little bit. But I got to go with Cain. Like I said, on paper it's a close fight, but I don't think it'll translate into a close fight. I think Cain will dominate Fabricio Werdum. I think he'll probably stop him via TKO, probably in the 4th round, or pick up a dominant late decision. But the thing is, with Werdum, I wasn't even too impressed with his fight against Mark Hunt. And Mark Hunt is not a Cain Velasquez. In my opinion, he was losing to Mark Hunt up until that flying knee KO. But anything can happen in sport of MMA. We know that because of Dan Henderson. So we've gone through UFC 188. Now let's go. Obviously, both you guys are bettors and everything. So let's just go through a few bets. I know both you guys are very high. Well, not skill-wise, but winning 30-27 decisions. Cathal Pendred. Both you guys are picking Pendred to win a decision in this fight. I'm going Montano via TKO. I think he's going to prevent the judges from giving Pendred a 30-27 decision. But let's hear your thoughts. Daniel?
Augusto Montano, he's a Mexican warrior, and he's actually a taller guy, but what you expect from a taller guy is to use more rangier strikes, such as their jab and their push kick, and Augusto Montano just gets in your face, and he throws big looping punches, and that's going to play right into Cathal Pendred's game. And what Cathal Pendred looks to do is basically weather the storm and grind you out, and I truly believe that despite the fact that the fight's in Mexico, I still think he's going to get the 30-27 here. So I do have Cathal Pendred with the upset here.
He wins fights by not winning fights. That's exactly what he does. He loses on points, but then the judges, literally no matter where he's fighting, will give him the 30-27 win. But I don't think he will get the upset over Montano. I do think Montano is just a bit better than his last opponents. I think he will be able to put Pendred away. But Paolo, I know you're also leaning towards Pendred in this fight. Let us know why.
Daniel pretty much broke it down. I mean, he's going to weather the storm from Montano, and he's going to grind him out to decision. The only thing that worries me about this is that Montano could get a somewhat BS stoppage kind of a thing from the referee. Because I could see Montano like laying it all on Pendred, and maybe Pendred's not even fully hurt, but if he's covering up and not defending himself, the ref could stop the fight. I mean, Pendred has some pretty poor striking defense, to say the least. He'll eat a lot of punches. He'll probably eat a couple of knees. He might even eat a couple of kicks, and he might get caught in a bad spot when Montano's just teeing off on him, and the ref might stop the fight. So he might get a raw deal that way. But if the ref doesn't stop the fight then and goes to the second and the third rounds, I see Pendred grinding out Montano. Montano might even gas himself out trying to finish Pendred in the first. And if that happens, it's Pendred's game all the way.
Very interesting. We'll see what happens in not too long. But so obviously, like I said multiple times, both you guys bet. Any cool prop bets you're possibly playing money on, or any underdogs? I know both you guys are going Yair Rodriguez for the fairly big upset over Rosa. Any of you playing him? Daniel?
Yeah, I got 3 underdogs on this card. Cathal Pendred, Yair Rodriguez, and Eddie Alvarez.
And Paolo?
I have two underdogs. I ended up not betting on Eddie Alvarez. No, wait. No, actually, that's a lie. I have a little small round robin for a total of a half unit on Werdum, Alvarez, and Pendred. But as far as a straight bet, I bet on Pendred and Rodriguez. Yeah. I was going to say Perez.
Any cool prop bets or any sort of Cain Velasquez inside the distance? I know, Paolo, you're going Werdum. You betting him inside the distance or anything? Any props? Daniel?
No, none of the props really stood out to me on this card, and I already had a lot of plays on the line. I had that parlay with Cejudo, Gastelum, and Tumenov, and Tumenov actually his fight got canceled, so it changed to a two-leg parlay with Cejudo and Gastelum, and then I had those three underdog plays, which I spoke to you about, and then I also have another parlay with Alejandro Perez and Clay Collard.
Very interesting. And Paolo, any last things to mention betting-wise?
No, I didn't. Oh wait, actually, I did have a 1 unit play on a 2-leg prop bet. I bet the Collard Benitez fight to go over. I think it was over 1.5 rounds, and then the Pendred. No, that was over 2.5, and then the Pendred Montano fight to go over 1.5 basically. So I parlayed those two together for 1 unit for. It was about 2.8 units. So. That's the prop I'm looking at. As far as my confidence on that, I don't know. These things are, over/under bets are so, they're a coin flip basically. Like anything can happen in there. But I've been getting lucky on it lately. I scored a lot in the New Orleans card, so hopefully the luck continues.
So obviously I don't bet regularly, but I'm gonna be playing a little bit on this card, and I know both you guys don't want me to, but I am probably going to play a little bit on Patrick Williams. He's fighting Perez on the preliminary card, and Perez is a slight favorite. It's not like plus 400 or anything, but I just do think Williams can pull off that upset, if you want to call it. Probably a TKO, I think I'm going. So I'm going to play that maybe. I'll think about it, and then I don't know. I'm picking Gilbert Melendez in the co-main event, but I might play like 1 unit or 2 units on Eddie Alvarez just because I do think he looked very good. I do think his fight with Cowboy Cerrone, his debut, would be even closer if I do think Octagon Jitters played a little part in that, but I do think we will see a good Alvarez. Like I said when we were breaking this down, it's a very close fight, and I wouldn't be shocked to see Alvarez pull off the win. And a couple other things I might play. Cain Velasquez inside the distance. I do think he will get it done, probably via TKO, late rounds 4th or 5th. That's just around like minus 150 or so. I might play a little bit on that. And then Kelvin Gastelum via stoppage is actually in plus money right now, so I'm thinking of playing that. I do think Gastelum will be able to either TKO or even submit Marquardt. So I think that's all. So Daniel, where can we find you on social media?
At Best Fight Picks on Twitter, bestfightpicks.com, at MMA Thought on Twitter, and that's about it, guys.
And Paolo, anything else to plug? I know you do some feature articles over at a Vendetta Fighter.
Yeah, the website is currently we're redoing the website a little bit. I mean, it's undergoing a little bit of construction, but yeah, look us up at vendettafighter.com. You can find me at Twitter. My Twitter handle's right there below me. Yeah. Oh yeah, and the Facebook group, the UFC Facebook group. I'm gonna plug that one right now. So if you want to join the discussion, we're the largest Facebook group we're the largest MMA group on Facebook. So you definitely should come have fun in there.
What's it called?
UFC. It's like UFC, but we're not the official UFC group. We are not in any way affiliated with Zuffa, and we have that.
Yeah, Paolo's the super president, everybody. No, but go ahead.
I am the president of the group. I'm kidding. I'm an administrator of the group, though, so yeah, I have a little bit more leeway. So. And
as for me, you can follow me on Twitter at NickUFC. Of course, check out my website, mmajr.co. We'll have live results, of course, of UFC 188 and post-fight coverage, so stay tuned for that. And then, of course, follow MMA Junior on Twitter at MMAJunior_. That's at MMAJUNIOR_. Couldn't get MMAJR for that one on Twitter, but worst comes to worst. And obviously check out my podcast, MMA Junior Radio. You can find that at MMAJuniorRadio.com. And also, one last thing, we actually just started covering BAMA, which is one of the largest UK promotions. And so one of my writers, John King, was actually, the event is over now. It was earlier today, but John King was covering that event from cage side for the first time. So that's pretty cool for MMA Junior. And thanks for joining me on this round table, guys. Enjoy the fights.
Yep.